They demanded Earthbow, but we answered with firepower. 1 week after the Battle of Mars orbit, the Velkari main fleet arrived at Earth. The planet hung in space like a blue and green jewel, beautiful and fragile. From orbit, you couldn't see the preparations below. You couldn't see the millions of people being evacuated from coastal cities. You couldn't see the weapon emplacements being constructed on every continent. You couldn't see the fear and determination burning in every human heart. But Supreme Overlord Thraxus could see the human fleet, and it made him laugh. "They have 50 ships," he said, looking at the tactical display. "We have 2,400. This isn't a battle, it's an execution." On Earth, in the underground command center, Admiral Hyun Park stood before a wall of screens showing the approaching armada. His officers waited for orders, waited for some sign that they had a plan to survive this. "Some people are suggesting evacuation," said Defense Minister Borahan. "Get as many civilians off-world as possible before the attack begins." "No," Hyun said firmly. "This is our home. We don't abandon it. We defend it. Even if we can't win," Hyun turned to face her. "Especially if we can't win. Because if we run now, we lose everything that makes us human. We lose hope. We lose dignity. We lose the right to call ourselves free." Engineer Soman Lee stepped forward. "We have one more card to play. The Hellstorm system. If we activate it now, we can—" "Not yet," Hyun interrupted. "The Hellstorm is our final option. Right now, I want to know about everything else we have." Soman pulled up schematics on the main display. "The moon's mass drivers are operational. We have 300 kinetic bombardment satellites in high orbit. The planetary defense grid is at full power, and I've been working on something new." "New?" Hyun raised an eyebrow. "Experimental, risky, but it might give us an edge." Soman's fingers flew across her tablet. "I call it the Cascade System. It uses our satellites as relay points to create a network of overlapping energy shields. No single shield is strong enough to stop a Velkari attack, but if they work together, sharing power and reinforcing weak points, they might buy us time." "How much time?" "Maybe an hour. Maybe less, but an hour might be all we need." Meanwhile, diplomat Jisoo Park was in the communications center, preparing for something that might be even more important than the battle itself. She stood before a camera, wearing a simple uniform with Earth's flag on the shoulder. "Are you sure about this?" asked her assistant Minji-ko. "No," Jisoo admitted. "But we have to try. If we're going to die here, at least let our death mean something." She had spent the past week gathering footage from the Battle of Mars orbit, videos of Vipers fighting against impossible odds, recordings of human ships refusing to surrender even when they were crippled and dying, testimonies from survivors about why they fought. Now she was going to broadcast it all across the galaxy. "People of the stars," Jisoo began, looking into the camera. "My name is Jisoo Park. I speak for the people of Earth. You've probably heard of us by now. The species that dared to fight the Velkari. The species that's about to be destroyed." She paused, letting that sink in. "The Velkari Dominion came to us with an ultimatum: surrender or die. They expected us to bow. They expected us to accept chains. But we are human, and we chose something else. We chose freedom." The footage began to play behind her. Ships exploding, fighters weaving through enemy fire, Marines boarding enemy vessels. All of it raw, unedited, showing the brutal reality of war. "We're not special," Jisoo continued. "We're not more advanced than you. We don't have secret superweapons that guarantee victory. What we have is the simple belief that our freedom is worth fighting for, that our dignity is worth dying for, that chains, no matter how comfortable, are still chains." She leaned closer to the camera. "If you're watching this from a world the Velkari conquered, I want you to know something. You can resist. You can fight back. It doesn't matter how strong they are. It doesn't matter how long they've ruled you. What matters is that you decide to stand up." The transmission ended. It began broadcasting on every frequency, in every language that human computers could translate. Across the galaxy, on dozens of subjugated worlds, people watched, and some of them began to hope. On the Velkari command ship, Supreme Overlord Thraxus watched Jisoo's broadcast with growing fury. "Find out who transmitted that," he ordered. "And silence them." "My lord," said his communications officer nervously. "It's being broadcast from Earth itself, and it's spreading. Other species are repeating the message. It's going viral across the information networks." Thraxus felt a cold sensation in his chest. Fear. He hadn't felt fear in decades. These humans were more dangerous than he thought, not because of their weapons but because of their ideas. "Begin the attack," he commanded. "I want Earth destroyed. Now." The Velkari fleet opened fire. The first wave of plasma bolts and missiles streaked toward Earth. The human defense fleet moved to intercept, their shields flaring as they absorbed the attacks. But there were too many. 50 ships couldn't stop 2,000. That's when Soman's cascade system activated. Around Earth, 300 satellites suddenly linked together in a network of energy. Shields appeared, overlapping, creating a shimmering barrier around the entire planet. The Velkari weapons hit the barrier and dispersed, their energy spreading across the network instead of punching through. "It's working," Soman shouted in the command center. "For now," Hyun said grimly, watching the power readings. "But they're draining fast. How long can we maintain this?" 40 minutes at current bombardment levels. Then we make those 40 minutes count." He opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, aggressive assault pattern. We need to break their formation and create chaos. Don't try to fight them ship to ship. Make them waste ammunition. Make them chase you. Buy us time." Captain Minho Kim, leading the fleet from the Defiant, understood immediately. "You heard the Admiral. Time to make them angry." The human ships charged directly into the Velkari formation. It looked like suicide, and it was designed to. The Velkari commanders, expecting the humans to maintain a defensive position around Earth, were caught off guard. Ships scrambled to target the charging humans, their formation breaking apart. Pilot Daeho Choi, now leading the reduced Viper squadron of 15 fighters, dove through the chaos. His aircraft had been patched up after the Mars battle, showing scorch marks and hasty repairs, but it flew true. "Remember," he told his squadron, "we're not trying to win. We're trying to survive and make them pay for every second we stay alive." The Vipers split up, each one becoming a separate target. The Velkari had to dedicate multiple ships to chase each fighter, pulling more and more vessels out of formation. It was inefficient, wasteful, but it was working. On the moon, Soman activated the mass drivers. Chunks of lunar rock, accelerated to incredible speeds, began launching toward the Velkari fleet. They weren't as powerful as the railgun platforms at Mars, but there were more of them, and they could fire continuously. The Velkari shields absorbed most of the impacts, but their power reserves were being drained. More importantly, they had to adjust their formation to avoid the densest bombardment zones, creating gaps that human ships could exploit. Below, on Earth's surface, soldier Yoonji Han prepared her troops for the worst. "If they break through the orbital defenses," she told her commanders, "they'll try to land troops. When they do, remember your training. Use the terrain. Use the buildings. Make them fight for every street, every room, every meter of ground." Her troops nodded, checking their weapons one last time. Many of them were young, barely out of training. But they were ready to defend their home. Above, the battle intensified. The Cascade shield was failing, sections flickering out as satellites were destroyed or drained of power. Velkari ships pressed closer, their weapons tearing into the human fleet. Commander Unisong's destroyer took a direct hit, splitting in half. She managed to evacuate most of her crew before the ship exploded, but 23 people died in seconds. The cruiser Indomitable lost all power and began drifting, its captain refusing to surrender, deliberately crashed his ship into a Velkari carrier. Both vessels were destroyed in the impact. One by one, the human ships fell. But each one took Velkari ships with them. Each sacrifice bought more time. On the Defiant, Minho watched his fleet disappear from the tactical display. Ships he had served with for years, friends he had known for decades. All gone. "Captain," said Lieutenant Junho Nam, "we're down to 27 ships, and the shield is at 15%. How many Velkari ships have we destroyed?" "Confirmed kills 114. Damaged but still operational 230. Minho allowed himself a grim smile. "Then we've made them bleed." "That's more than they expected." The Cascade shield finally failed completely. Earth lay exposed. Supreme Overlord Thraxus leaned forward in his command chair. "Target their major cities. Begin bombardment," but before the order could be executed, something unexpected happened. Across the galaxy, on 17 different worlds, the subjugated species rose in rebellion. They had watched Jisu's broadcast. They had seen humans fighting against impossible odds, refusing to surrender. And they decided that if humans could stand up to the Velkari, so could they. They demanded Earth bow, but we answered with firepower. The Valkyrie dreadnought was 5 kilometers long and massed more than a small moon. As it broke through Earth's atmosphere, it began to burn, surrounded by a halo of fire that looked like a second sun descending from the sky. Supreme Overlord Thraxus stood on the bridge, his face twisted with rage and madness. If he couldn't have victory, he would have revenge. Impact in 7 minutes, reported the navigation officer, his voice shaking. In the underground command center, alarms screamed. Admiral Hyun Park stared at the trajectory calculations, his face gray. The dreadnought was going to hit in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The impact would trigger tsunamis that would destroy every coastal city on the planet. The debris thrown into the atmosphere would block out the sun for years. It would be the end of human civilization. Options, Hyun demanded. We have none, said his tactical officer. Our remaining ships don't have the firepower to destroy something that massive. The surface weapons can't penetrate its shields. Even if we hit it with everything we have, we might deflect it slightly, but it will still impact. Somin Lee was working frantically at her console. I can overload all the orbital platforms simultaneously. The combined energy release might be enough to vaporize the ship, but the explosion will be massive. It could still cause catastrophic damage. Do it, Hyun ordered. Wait, said a voice over the comm. Captain Minho Kim. Everyone turned to look at the screens. Minho's face appeared calm despite the chaos around him. Behind him, the bridge of the Defiant was damaged, sparking, barely functional. I have a better idea, Minho said quietly. Or at least a different one. What are you thinking? Hyun asked. The Defiant still has engines. We're damaged but mobile. If I push the reactor past safety limits, I can get enough acceleration to intercept the dreadnought. Ram it head on. The collision might not destroy it, but it could alter the trajectory enough to make it miss Earth. Lieutenant Junho Nam, standing behind Minho, shook his head violently. Captain, that's suicide. The entire crew will evacuate in escape pods, Minho finished. I'll handle the final approach myself. Minho, Yoon said softly. There has to be another way. There isn't, and we both know it. Minho smiled sadly. I've been a soldier my whole life, Admiral. Let me finish the way I lived. Protecting Earth. Before anyone could respond, another voice cut in. Pilot Daeho Choi. Captain, with respect, ramming them is inefficient, but I have a different approach. Daeho's Viper appeared on the tactical display, accelerating toward the dreadnought at maximum speed. I'm carrying 3 nuclear warheads, Daeho explained, salvaged from damaged ships. If I can get inside the dreadnought's shield envelope and detonate them directly against the reactor core, the internal explosion should tear the ship apart from the inside. That's also suicide, Commander Yuna Song said over the comm. Daeho, get out of there. That's an order. Sorry, Commander, but I'm the fastest pilot in the fleet. If anyone can thread that needle, it's me. Daeho's voice was steady, almost cheerful. Besides, someone has to be the hero, right? No, Yuna shouted. You're 25 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you, and I'm spending it saving Earth. Sounds like a pretty good life to me. Saman Lee suddenly straightened. Wait, what if we combine all 3 approaches? Daeho goes in first, targets the reactor. Minho times his ram to hit right after the internal explosion. I trigger the orbital platforms at the exact moment of collision. The combined force might be enough to completely destroy the dreadnought and disperse the debris field safely. That's still 3 suicide missions, Hyun said. No, Minho corrected. It's 1 coordinated strike, and it's our only real chance. Silence fell over the command center. Everyone knew what was being asked. Everyone understood the cost. Do it, Hyun finally said. And thank you. All of you. Daeho's Viper accelerated toward the descending dreadnought. His hands were steady on the controls despite his racing heart. Through his cockpit window he could see Earth below, blue and beautiful, worth everything he was about to do. This is Viper 1 to all remaining squadrons, he said into his comm. It's been an honor flying with you. The other pilots responded, their voices thick with emotion. Daeho smiled, then cut the channel. Time to focus. The dreadnought's shields loomed ahead, a shimmering barrier of energy. Most weapons would be stopped. But Daeho's fighter was small, fast, and he was very, very good. He dove toward the ship at an angle, watching the shield's power fluctuations. There, a weak point where the generators couldn't quite maintain full strength. He adjusted his trajectory by millimeters. The Viper punched through the shield in a burst of sparks. Alarms screamed in his cockpit as the energy discharge fried half his systems, but he was inside. The hull of the dreadnought filled his vision. Weapon turrets tracked him, firing streams of plasma. Deho rolled and weaved, his fighter dancing between the blasts. A near miss melted his left wing. Another scorched his fuselage. But he kept going. He found what he was looking for. A thermal exhaust port barely 2 meters wide, leading directly to the main reactor. Of course, the Valkyrie would have such an obvious weakness. They had never faced an enemy crazy enough to exploit it. "This one's for Earth," Deho whispered. He flew straight into the port. The walls scraped against his fighter, tearing off pieces. His screens went dark. His engines screamed in protest. But momentum carried him forward, deeper and deeper into the ship. He saw the reactor chamber ahead, a massive space filled with glowing energy. Perfect Deho armed the 3 nuclear warheads, setting them to detonate on impact. Then, in his last moment, he thought of his family, his friends, the planet he would never see again. He smiled. The Viper hit the reactor core and everything turned white. From space, the dreadnought's midsection exploded outward in a massive fireball. The ship buckled, breaking apart, but its momentum still carried it toward Earth. "Now," Salman shouted. Captain Minho Kim pushed the Defiant's engines beyond every safety limit. The ship shook violently, threatening to tear itself apart. His crew had already evacuated in escape pods. Only he remained, hands locked on the controls. "For Earth," he said calmly. The Defiant, humanity's flagship, humanity's pride, slammed into the front section of the dying dreadnought at relativistic speed. The impact created a shockwave visible from the ground. Metal screamed. Superstructure crumpled. The dreadnought's forward momentum halted, then reversed. At the same moment, every orbital weapons platform fired. Every remaining human ship fired. Every surface installation fired. All the energy converged on the breaking dreadnought. The ship disintegrated completely. Instead of one massive impact, thousands of smaller pieces began falling toward Earth's atmosphere. Most burned up harmlessly. The few that reached the ground were no larger than cars, causing localized damage, but nothing catastrophic. Earth was saved. In the command center, people stared at the screens in stunned silence. Then someone started crying. Then someone else. Within seconds, the entire center erupted in tears, cheers, and prayers of gratitude. Admiral Hyun Park stood perfectly still, his eyes closed, whispering the names of the fallen. Minho Kim, Daeho Choi, thousands of others who had given everything. Above Earth, the remaining Valkyrie fleet hung in shocked silence. Their supreme overlord was dead. Their command structure was shattered. And below them, a species they had thought would be easy prey had just killed the most powerful being in their empire. The Valkyrie began to retreat. "Admiral," said the communications officer, "they're requesting permission to surrender." Hyun opened his eyes. "Accepted. But they leave our system immediately, and they take a message back to their empire. Earth is not for conquering. Earth is not for enslaving. Earth is free, and we will fight to keep it that way." The surviving Valkyrie ships turned and fled, limping away from the solar system. They would return to their empire to find it collapsing from within. The subjugated species they had oppressed now rising in open rebellion. The age of the Valkyrie dominion was over. Weeks later, search and rescue teams found something remarkable. Deep in the debris field of the Defiant, they discovered an escape pod. Inside, badly wounded but alive, was Captain Minho Kim. He had set the ship on automatic pilot at the last second and ejected. When he woke up in the hospital, the first thing he asked was, "Did we win?" "We won," Jisoo Park told him, holding his hand. "Earth is safe." Minho closed his eyes and smiled. On the moon, they built a memorial. A tall structure of white marble, visible from Earth with a telescope. On it were carved the names of everyone who died in the war. At the top, in letters that caught the sunlight, was an inscription. "They demanded we bow. We answered with firepower. They offered us chains. We chose freedom. This is humanity's promise: we will never kneel." Across the galaxy, that memorial became famous. Species that had never dared resist their oppressors began to find courage. The Valkyrie who remained learned humility and became allies. And Earth, once dismissed as primitive and weak, became known as the world that changed everything. Years later, Jisoo Park stood before the Galactic Council of Free Worlds, an organization formed in the wake of the Valkyrie collapse. She represented Earth as its ambassador, helping to build a future where freedom was protected and aggression was met with united resistance. They demanded Earthbow, but we answered with firepower. The two fleets faced each other across the cold darkness of space. Mars hung in the background like a red eye, watching what was about to unfold. The Valkyrie vanguard numbered 300 warships, each one massive and bristling with weapons. The human fleet had 80 ships looking like toys in comparison. On the bridge of the Valkyrie command ship, War Commander Vexus studied the human vessels with contempt. They were small, poorly armored, clearly outmatched. This would be over quickly. "Open a channel," Vexus ordered. "Let's give these primitives one last chance to save themselves." The transmission opened. Vexus's face appeared on every human ship's screen. His forearms spread wide in a gesture that might have been meant as welcoming, but looked more like a predator about to strike. "Humans of Earth," Vexus said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "You see our strength. You see your weakness. Surrender now and you will live. Fight and you will die. The choice is simple." On the Defiant, Captain Minho Kim stood perfectly still. His crew watched him, waiting for his response. The entire fleet waited. Earth itself waited. Minho activated his communication system. His voice was calm, clear, and carried not even a hint of fear. "No." That single word echoed across every channel. Then Minho cut the transmission. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Valkyrie fleet surged forward, weapons powering up, ready to crush the impudent humans who dared defy them. "All ships," Minho said calmly. "Execute pattern Delta, show them what we can do." The human fleet didn't charge forward to meet the Valkyrie. Instead, they scattered in all directions, splitting into small groups of 4 or 5 ships. The Valkyrie commanders shouted orders, confused by the tactic. In every battle they had ever fought, fleets met head-on in massive exchanges of fire. This was different. The first human strike came from the Viper fighters. Daeho Choi led his squadron of 30 small craft screaming toward the Valkyrie formation at speeds the enemy couldn't match. Their sensors barely registered the humans before the attack began. "Break formation," Daeho shouted into his comm. "Pick your targets and hit them hard." The Vipers dove between the massive Valkyrie warships, their small size making them almost impossible to target. Missiles streaked from their wings, striking at engine sections and weapon arrays. The Valkyrie point defense systems, designed to stop large projectiles, couldn't track the fast-moving fighters. 3 Valkyrie ships immediately lost power as their engines exploded. 2 more had their weapon systems disabled. The formation broke apart as ships tried to maneuver away from the swarming attack craft. "They're like insects," Vexus roared. "Swat them down." But the Vipers were already gone, racing away at full speed, leaving chaos in their wake. That's when the railguns fired. Hidden on Mars's 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos, the 42 railgun platforms that Soman Lee had built, suddenly came online. They had been disguised as mining equipment, scientific instruments, nothing that would attract attention. Now they revealed their true purpose. The first salvo of tungsten projectiles launched at 12% the speed of light. The Valkyrie had no warning. Their sensors couldn't detect the incoming rounds until it was far too late. 6 Valkyrie capital ships simply ceased to exist. The kinetic energy of the projectiles didn't just penetrate their armor. It vaporized everything it touched. Metal, crew, weapon systems all converted to superheated plasma in a fraction of a second. "What was that?" Vexus screamed, staring at the tactical display showing 6 of his ships simply gone. Before anyone could answer, the second salvo fired. Then the third. The human fleet, now regrouped into attack formations, pressed their advantage. They didn't try to match the Valkyrie in firepower. Instead, they used speed and tactics, hitting weak points, targeting specific systems, refusing to engage in the kind of straightforward battle the Valkyrie expected. Commander Yuna Song led a group of destroyers in a daring maneuver, flying directly through the center of the Valkyrie formation. As they passed, they released thousands of small mines, each one programmed to home in on the nearest engine signature. The mines scattered throughout the enemy fleet like seeds in the wind. Then they detonated. The explosions were small individually, but there were so many of them. 30 Valkyrie ships lost propulsion. 15 more suffered critical damage to their life support systems. The neat formation dissolved into chaos as damaged ships collided with healthy ones, as commanders shouted conflicting orders, as the entire vanguard realized they were fighting an enemy that didn't follow any rules they understood. "They're using guerrilla tactics," one Velkari officer shouted. "They're not fighting honorably. There is no honor in extinction." Minho Kim's voice cut through the comm channels, somehow transmitted directly to the Velkari ships. "We fight to survive, and we fight to win." The drone swarms came next. Thousands of small autonomous weapons, each one the size of a human fist, each one carrying a shaped charge designed to penetrate armor at close range. They swarmed the Velkari ships like angry bees, targeting sensor arrays, communication dishes, weapon emplacements. The Velkari fired wildly at the drones, but for every one they destroyed, 3 more took its place. Their targeting systems, designed for large-scale combat, couldn't cope with thousands of tiny, independently moving targets. "Fall back," Vexus finally ordered, seeing his fleet being torn apart. "Retreat to the outer system." But Minho had anticipated this. The human ships had been herding the Velkari into a specific area of space, and that area was now filled with mines, debris, and obstacles that made high-speed escape impossible. The Velkari fleet was trapped. "Now," Minho said quietly. Lieutenant Junho Nam pressed a button on his console. "Marine boarding teams, you are go." 50 human assault shuttles hidden among the debris field suddenly activated. They shot toward the crippled Velkari ships, their hulls covered in stealth coating that made them nearly invisible. Soldier Yunji Han led the first team. Her shuttle slammed into the side of a damaged Velkari cruiser, cutting through the weakened armor with plasma torches. Her unit poured into the ship, weapons ready. The Velkari crew inside were massive, each one twice the size of a human. They were strong and intimidating. But they had never fought an enemy that used close-quarters combat the way humans did. Yunji's team moved through the ship like shadows, using speed and precision instead of brute force. They planted charges on critical systems. They captured navigation data and communication codes. Most importantly, they made sure every Velkari on that ship knew that humanity could reach them anywhere. "Package secured," Yunji reported, her team hauling a captured Velkari officer back to their shuttle, moving to extraction. Across the battlefield, similar operations were happening on a dozen ships. The Velkari had never experienced boarding actions before. Their ships weren't designed to repel internal threats. The humans exploited this weakness ruthlessly. The battle raged for 6 hours. At the end, the Velkari vanguard was destroyed. Of the 300 ships that had entered the solar system, only 43 survived to limp away. The rest were debris, slowly orbiting Mars like a metal graveyard. But the victory came at a terrible cost. 30 human ships were destroyed. Over 12,000 crew members dead. Minho Kim stood on his bridge, looking at the casualty reports, feeling the weight of every name. "We won," Junho said quietly. "We survived the first wave," Minho corrected. "This was just their scouting force." As if to confirm his words, the sensor officer suddenly went rigid. "Captain, I'm picking up new contacts. Multiple signatures coming in fast." The main screen shifted to show the edge of the solar system. What appeared there made everyone's blood run cold. Ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. The Velkari main fleet, so vast it looked like a moving wall of metal and death, was entering human space. Supreme Overlord Thraxus himself led the armada. He had watched the Battle of Mars orbit from a distance, his face twisted with rage. These humans had destroyed his vanguard. They had humiliated his forces. They had dared to resist. "Prepare for total assault," Thraxus commanded. "No more mercy. No more chances to surrender. We will burn their world to ash and scatter the ashes to the void. Earth will become a legend, a warning to every species in the galaxy about what happens when you defy the Velkari." His communications officer hesitated. "My lord, perhaps we should reconsider. They have weapons we didn't anticipate." "Silence!" Thraxus struck the officer, sending him sprawling. "I don't care about their weapons. We have numbers. We have power. And we have the will to see this through to the end. The humans will break. They always break." Back on the Defiant, Minho received the updated sensor readings. His tactical officer calculated the numbers 3 times, hoping she was wrong. She wasn't. 2,400 Velkari warships, she reported, her voice shaking. "They'll reach Earth in 72 hours. The bridge fell silent. Everyone did the math in their heads. With the losses they had taken, Humanity now had fewer than 60 combat-capable ships. 60 against 2,000. Get me Admiral Hyun, Minho said. And someone contact Somin Lee. Tell her to prepare everything. We're going to need every weapon she's ever dreamed of. They demanded Earthbow, but we answered with firepower. Deep beneath the streets of Seoul, 300 meters underground, was a facility that didn't exist on any official map. The elevator ride down took 5 minutes. The security checks took another 10. When Admiral Hyun Park finally stepped into the main research lab, he felt like he had entered another world. The chamber was enormous, easily the size of 3 football fields. Technicians in white coats moved between massive machines that hummed with power. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing weapons designs and test results. And in the center of it all stood Somin Lee, looking tiny next to the prototype railgun that stretched 50 meters across the floor. "Welcome to Project Prometheus," Somin said with a tired smile. "We've been waiting a long time to show you this." Hyun walked forward slowly, taking it all in. "How long has this been operational?" 7 years. We started development after the first long-range probes detected signs of hostile civilizations. The government wanted insurance. Something we could use if first contact went badly. "It went very badly," Hyun said. "Then it's a good thing we prepared." Somin gestured to the railgun. "This is the Mark 7 prototype. It uses magnetic acceleration to fire a tungsten projectile at 12% the speed of light. The kinetic energy from a single shot can punch through a kilometer of solid steel. How many do we have? 42 installed on the moon's surface, hidden in old mining facilities. Another 30 on Mars. They've been disguised as scientific equipment for years." Hyun felt something he hadn't felt in days. Hope. "What else do you have?" Somin's smile grew wider. "Follow me." They walked through the facility, passing from one miracle to another. Somin showed him the drone swarms, thousands of small autonomous weapons that could coordinate attacks using quantum entanglement. She showed him the new armor plating that could absorb plasma blasts and convert the heat into electricity. She showed him missiles that could split into 100 smaller warheads, each one capable of independent targeting. "We've studied every military science fiction scenario humanity has ever written," Somin explained. "Books, movies, games, theoretical papers. We took all of it seriously. We asked ourselves, what if aliens really did come? What if they were hostile? How would we fight back? And this is your answer? This is humanity's answer. We refuse to be victims." In another section of the facility, pilot Daeho Choi was running through his pre-flight checks. He was young, barely 25, with quick hands and quicker reflexes. His Viper-class fighter sat in the launch bay, smaller than traditional warships but built for speed and agility. "How does she handle?" asked his squadron leader, Commander Yuna Song. "Like a dream," Daeho said, running his hand along the fighter's hull. "I've never flown anything this responsive. The thrust-to-weight ratio is insane." "Good. Because you're going to need every advantage you can get." Yuna pulled up a holographic display showing the Velkari fleet composition. Their ships are big and slow. They rely on heavy armor and overwhelming firepower, but their point defense systems are outdated. They've never had to deal with fast attack craft because every species they've fought has tried to match them ship for ship. "But we're not going to do that," Daeho said, understanding immediately. "Exactly. We're going to swarm them, hit and run, strike from unexpected angles. Make them waste ammunition on targets they can't catch. Your Vipers are going to be the tip of the spear." Daeho felt his heart racing with excitement and fear. "When do we launch?" 2 days. Get some rest while you can." But Daeho couldn't rest. None of them could. The weight of what was coming pressed down on everyone. Across the solar system, preparations continued. On Mars, engineers activated the hidden railgun platforms, running system checks and loading ammunition. On Earth's moon, military bases that had been dormant for years suddenly came alive with activity. In orbit, the human fleet gathered, 80 ships against 300 approaching Velkari vessels. Captain Minho Kim stood on the bridge of the Defiant, reviewing tactical data. His first officer, Lieutenant Junho Nam, stood beside him. "The crew is ready," Junho said quietly. "Scared but ready." "Fear is good," Minho replied. "Fear keeps you sharp. It's overconfidence that gets you killed." "Do you think we can win?" Minho was silent for a moment, watching the distant stars. "I think we're going to surprise them. They expect us to surrender or die quickly. They don't know what humans are capable of when we're cornered." On Earth, soldier Yoonji Han was training her Special Forces unit in urban combat. They were preparing for the worst-case scenario, Valkyrie troops landing on Earth itself. Remember, she told her troops, their technology might be more advanced, but they've never fought an enemy that uses guerrilla tactics. They expect traditional battles. We're going to give them something else entirely. Her soldiers nodded, checking their weapons, reviewing building layouts, memorizing every advantage they could find. If the Valkyrie made it to the surface, humanity would make them pay for every meter of ground. Back in the underground facility, a debate was raging. Jisoo Park stood in front of a conference table, her voice rising with passion. The Hellstorm system is too much. If we use it, we're no better than the Valkyrie. The Hellstorm system was the most controversial weapon in humanity's arsenal. It turned the moon itself into a weapon, using mass drivers to launch asteroids and debris at incredible speeds. The destruction would be total and indiscriminate. We're nothing like the Valkyrie, Admiral Hyun said firmly. They came to enslave us. We're defending our home. There's a difference. But where do we draw the line? At what point does survival become an excuse for anything? The line is drawn when we start attacking unprovoked, Soman said. We didn't choose this fight, they did. And I won't apologize for making sure we have the tools to win. Jisoo looked around the room, seeing no support for her position. Finally, she sat down, her face troubled. I just hope we don't lose ourselves in the process of surviving. We won't, Minho said. Because people like you are here to remind us why we're fighting. Not just to survive, but to protect the values that make us human. The meeting ended, but the tension remained. That night, Soman found Jisoo in the observation room, staring up at the artificial sky display. I'm not your enemy, Soman said softly. I know. I'm just scared of what this war will turn us into. Me too. But I'm more scared of what happens if we lose. At least if we win, we still have a chance to be better. If we lose, there's no future at all. Jisoo nodded slowly. Show me the weapons. All of them. If we're going to use them, I need to understand what we're capable of. Okay, but I warn you, some of it is hard to see. They walked through the facility together, Soman explaining each system, each weapon, each terrible necessity. Jisoo listened, her face growing paler but her resolve hardening. Finally, they stood before the Hellstorm control panel. This is the last resort, Soman said. If everything else fails, if they're about to win, we activate this. It won't save Earth, but it will make sure the Valkyrie pay such a high price that they never threaten another world. Mutual destruction, Jisoo whispered. Mutually assured survival, Soman corrected. Because if they know we'll do this, maybe they'll think twice. As the final hours before the Valkyrie arrival ticked down, the solar system held its breath. Admiral Hyun gave one last address to the fleet. His face appeared on every ship's screen, in every military base, in every command center. We stand at the edge of extinction, he said. The enemy is stronger. They have more ships. They have more experience. But they don't have what we have. They don't have homes worth dying for. They don't have families to protect. They don't have the knowledge that if we fail here, everything we love disappears. He paused, letting his words sink in. So we won't fail. We'll fight with everything we have. We'll show them that humanity doesn't break. And when this is over, when the galaxy asks what happened here, they'll know one thing for certain. Earth chose freedom, and we were willing to pay any price to keep it. The transmission ended. The Valkyrie Vanguard entered the solar system. They demanded Earthbow, but we answered with firepower. The stars looked beautiful through the viewport of the UNS Defiant. Captain Minho Kim stood with his hands behind his back, watching the distant lights twinkle in the darkness of space. He had been out here for 3 years now, leading diplomatic missions to new star systems. Most days were quiet. Most days were peaceful. Today was not one of those days. The communications officer turned in her chair, her face pale. Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's broadcasting on all frequencies across the entire galaxy. Minho walked to the center of the bridge. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life. The creature that appeared was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with dark purple skin and 4 arms crossed over its armored chest. Its eyes glowed with an orange light that seemed to burn with contempt. Behind it, dozens of warships filled the void of space, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. I am Supreme Overlord Thraxus of the Valkyrie Dominion, the creature spoke, its voice deep and grinding like rocks crushing together. We have conquered 17 star systems. We have brought 100 species to their knees. Now we come to you, humans of Earth. Minho felt his jaw tighten. He knew what was coming. You have 72 hours to surrender, Thraxus continued. Dismantle your military. Hand over your weapons. Accept your place as servants to the Dominion. If you refuse, we will burn your cities. We will darken your skies. We will make your world a monument to the cost of defiance. The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent. Minho looked at his crew. Young faces, experienced faces, all staring at him with the same question in their eyes. What do we do now? Get me Admiral Hyun Park, Minho said quietly. And someone wake up Jisoo. She needs to hear this. 2 hours later, the United Defense Council met in an emergency session. The room was deep beneath Seoul, protected by meters of reinforced concrete and steel. Screens lined the walls showing representatives from every nation on Earth. At the head of the table sat Admiral Hyun Park, a man who had served in the military for 40 years. His hair was gray, his face lined with scars from old battles, but his eyes were sharp and clear. We've analyzed the transmission, said Intelligence Officer Taemin Shin, pulling up holographic displays. The Valkyrie Dominion is real. They've been expanding for the past decade. Every species they've encountered has either surrendered or been destroyed. How many ships do they have? Asked Hyun. At least 3,000 warships that we can confirm. Maybe more. A heavy silence filled the room. Jisoo Park stood up. She was younger than most people in the room, with kind eyes and a voice that always sought peace. We need to try diplomacy first. Maybe we can negotiate terms. Maybe there's a way to avoid war. They don't want negotiation, Minho said from his position near the wall. I've seen species like this before. They view kindness as weakness. They only understand strength. But we can't fight 3,000 warships, said Defense Minister Borahan. Our entire fleet is less than 300 ships. It would be suicide. Engineer Soman Lee, who had been quiet until now, cleared her throat. Maybe not. Everyone turned to look at her. She was small, barely reaching 5 feet tall, but her mind was considered one of the brightest on Earth. She had been working in secret government labs for the past 5 years. We have assets they don't know about, Soman said carefully. Weapon systems that have never been tested in real combat. Projects that were designed specifically for a scenario like this. What kind of weapons? Hyun asked. Railguns that can fire projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed, drone swarms with quantum coordination, kinetic bombardment platforms, and other things I can't discuss in an open session. Hyun leaned back in his chair. Show me everything now. The meeting lasted 6 more hours. They reviewed strategies, analyzed enemy capabilities, and calculated odds. The mathematics were brutal. Even with secret weapons, Earth's chances of survival were less than 20%. But there was another factor to consider. If we surrender, Minho said, what happens to us? They said we would be servants. But what does that really mean? Taemin pulled up files on his tablet. We've intercepted communications from their conquered species. The Valkyrie use client races as soldiers, laborers, and experimental subjects. They strip planets of resources. They take children from families to indoctrinate them. Life expectancy for subjugated species drops by 50% within the first generation. Jisoo's face went pale. That's not servitude. That's slavery. It's worse than slavery, said Hyun. It's the slow death of our entire species. The vote was called. Every representative had one choice to make. Surrender or fight. One by one, the votes came in. Africa voted to fight. Europe voted to fight. Asia voted to fight. The Americas voted to fight. Australia voted to fight. Every nation, every people, every culture on Earth came together with a single voice. They would not bow. Admiral Hyun Park stood and addressed the council. Then it's decided. We mobilize for total war. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have. We fight for our world. We fight for our freedom. And we fight to show the galaxy that humanity will never kneel. The room erupted in determined voices. People already moving to their stations, already preparing for what was coming. Minho found Jisoo in the hallway afterward. She was leaning against the wall, tears running down her face. I wanted peace, she whispered. I spent my whole life believing we could solve problems with words. Sometimes words aren't enough, Minho said gently. Sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to stand up and fight for it. Will we survive this? Mino was quiet for a moment. I don't know. But I know we'll make them remember us. Every species in this galaxy will know that Earth chose freedom over chains. Jisoo wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. Then I'll help however I can. If we're going to fight, we fight together. Across the planet, the mobilization began. Soldiers reported to bases. Ships powered up their engines. Factories switched to wartime production. Families held each other tight, knowing that the world was about to change forever. In orbit around Earth, the small fleet of human warships gathered. They looked fragile compared to what was coming. But inside each ship were men and women who had made a choice. They would defend their home. They would protect their families. They would show the Velkari that humanity was not prey. The 72-hour countdown began. Supreme Overlord Thraxus, watching from his command ship at the edge of the solar system, smiled. These humans would break like all the others. They always did. He had no idea how wrong he was.